Welcome to the Wednesday, May 6th edition of the Day Weather Podcast. Going to have some nice weather today, but, well, it's going to be a bad hair day tomorrow for many of you. Very pleasant conditions, though, will be found across the Intermountain West. Today's temperatures will be 60s and 70s, sunny to partly sunny skies. Good day to take advantage of. Tomorrow, a cold front rolls in and brings lots of wind, especially to Wyoming, Nebraska, and parts of northern Colorado. Not a lot of moisture with this front. Most of it will stay across Montana, northern Wyoming, and South Dakota with a few showers elsewhere. But it'll be all about the wind tomorrow. Cooler weather through early next week. I wouldn't say cold, just cool. Certainly not the warmth that we experienced a week and a half ago, as temperatures are really deviating a lot closer to normal, if not a little bit below. What side of the divide you are on will make a big difference. We talked about this yesterday. The Continental Divide is going to be the dividing line between who has warmer spring-like conditions and who's cooler and more unsettled. And that's going to play out for probably another week here. We're going to give you a sea surface temperature update out in the Pacific and elsewhere as things have changed a little bit. We'll talk about that at the end. The current setup is like this. This is the forecast for tomorrow. We have this high pressure ridge still up along the west coast with a couple of disturbances moving through. This guy right here, this little trough, is not only a trough of low pressure, but it's also dragging in a cold front. And look at the upper level winds cutting right in from the northwest. And this is what's going to make it windy. When you have high pressure on the western side of the divide and low pressure on the eastern side of the divide, remember that high pressure always moves air to low pressure. High pressure moves air to low pressure. So when you accelerate the pressure gradient through the mountain gaps, through the canyons, the gaps in the mountains across the interior west, you're going to accelerate the wind, and then you have colder air coming in behind it. So we've got a very windy setup coming, and this is where you see the winds tomorrow afternoon. You can see these shaded areas are winds gusting 30 to 40. These are wind gusts that are around 50 miles an hour or so. Wouldn't be surprised if we have 50, 60 mile per hour wind gusts in some areas of northern Colorado, western Nebraska, central and southeastern areas of Wyoming. So extra hairspray if you want to venture outside tomorrow. This is what the precipitation forecast is looking like. The front is going to bring the heavier moisture to Montana, northwest South Dakota, in the eastern areas of Nebraska. Spotty showers elsewhere along the divide of Colorado and Wyoming. But it's a pattern that is not going to produce much moisture around our neck of the woods, just a lot of wind. Now, we talked about temperatures. Now they are going to be cooler than average. This is the temperature forecast for Mother's Day Sunday. Temperatures along Colorado's Front Range and Front Range of Wyoming are a good 10, 11, 12 degrees below average. So we're going to be cool for Mother's Day Sunday, although the real cold air is going to be up over eastern Montana and the Dakotas and points east. Here's the big Continental Divide situation. West of the divide, temperatures are going to be much warmer. And that's going to play out right on through the weekend. Now, by early next week, wow, we've got a lot of purple there. This is the forecasted temperatures for noon on Tuesday. So by next Tuesday, temperatures across portions of Nebraska, Kansas, northeast Colorado are going to be 20 to 30 degrees below average. So that might mean high temperatures Tuesday, only 40s to near 50 degrees or so, with the divide holding up a lot of the cold air. But notice out west, look out here. See this green and blue? This is because a low pressure system is going to come into the Pacific Northwest and West Coast early next week. So we have cold air at the surface here. We have low pressure coming in off the West Coast that will lift some of that warmer air on the western slope over this cold air. And if that happens, well, we could end up with some light areas of rain and, yep, some snow late Monday and the Tuesday of next week. And here it is. Now, we're not saying this is going to happen, but this is a possibility. We're going to be looking at it being cold enough that areas of rain and snow could take place overnight Monday and the Tuesday across some portions of Wyoming and Colorado, certainly freezing temperatures here. We're still not quite yet at that last frost freeze date And as we get into early next week, we could have some cold temperatures and a little bit of wintry weather. Nothing terrible, but it's on the table. Now, by the end of next week, we start to warm up, but not by a lot. See, it gets a little bit warmer here by next Friday. We still have some low pressure here in Northern California. So we're not looking at temperatures getting back to where they were just a week ago when we had 70s and 80s. We're going to go through a phase here where our patience will be tested in terms of getting us to summer. We're just not there yet, and we usually aren't until we get into that last week of May and early June. This is the jet stream pattern for Sunday. You can see this big ridge up here along the west coast, this deep, huge trough of cold air. By early next week, though, we start to see that trough get broken down a bit. And here's that low pressure system coming early next week that could bring the rain and snow by late Monday and the Tuesday. By the end of next week, we see more of a west to southwesterly flow. This is where we start to warm up, but we've got this guy to deal with later, this guy to deal with later, and we still have unseasonably cold air still up into Canada. So we're going to just have to wait things out probably another 10 or 14 days. By 15 days out, around May 20th, we have a large area of low pressure coming into the west, and we're probably going to have a phase right around the 20th, 21st, 22nd of May where it will be cool and wet in the western United States again. What does this mean? This means that it's going to be Memorial Day weekend and that first weekend of June before we're over the hurdle, I'm afraid to say. Let's take an update at the sea surface temperatures across the globe. A couple things I want to show you. First of all, there's been a resurgence of warmer than average sea surface temperatures up in the Gulf of Alaska. Now, watchers of this podcast know that when you have sea surface temperatures warmer than normal in the Gulf of Alaska, that makes the jet stream more wavy. And that's exactly what's happening with that big plunge of cold air into the central and eastern United States. Those sea surface temperatures helping that jet stream go like this. So that's one reason why it started to turn colder here over the last week or so. Sea surface temperatures there have warmed up. Now look at the equator area. Notice this thin area of blue? Well, here it is. Those are the sea surface temperatures that keep being predicted to drop and the formation possibly of La Nina. That's starting to happen now. The Pacific, generally speaking, is still warmer than average on the whole, especially with this big warm up here in the Gulf of Alaska, but cooling off near the equator. Also, we're beginning to see these cooling trends also in the southern hemisphere. Now, out in the Atlantic, we don't talk about the Atlantic very often because, well, it doesn't really impact us. But for those of you who are hurricane watchers, a couple of things could really lead to a big hurricane season. One is sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, and into the west coast of Africa here. These are warmer than average sea surface temperatures. What's interesting and what we've learned is that when you have a weak La Nina or you have a cooler Pacific here and a warmer Atlantic here, well, this is when you start to get those hurricanes that get more active during hurricane season. So hurricane season 2020 has some promise to be bigger than the last couple of years. We'll keep you updated on these sea surface temperatures as they play a really big role in how things unfold during the course of a season. Have a great Wednesday. Watch out for the wind tomorrow.